Welcome back to my channel Celebuzz. Please share and subscribe and press the bell icon for new updates. My shop is really special. We do things our own way here. For us, it's all about making cars look cool and pretty as they can be. He once had everything, fame, money, and everyone knew who he was. He was the star of custom car shows on TV. He built a big business out of plain metal and loud engines. He turned his love for cars, music, and old-style culture into a life most people only dream about. But then, out of nowhere, Danny Koker left the big screen with no reason or goodbye. Most people didn't know that there were scary news stories no one saw coming. Awful lies that almost ruined his good name forever. Court fights that almost took everything from him, and quiet time that left fans confused. What really happened to Danny Koker? Most people only saw what the cameras showed them, and they never found out what was really happening behind those garage doors. For a man who spent his whole life giving his best for others, what he got back will really surprise you. The start of Danny Koker's story. He never went to college to learn about fixing cars. He never sat in a classroom to learn about engines, and he didn't have some fancy paper or a famous teacher to show him how. Everything Danny Koker knows about cars, he learned by doing it himself, getting his hands dirty, taking things apart, getting lost in the mess of metal and wires, and somehow putting them back together better than before. Danny Koker, the man who would later become known as the star of counting cars, started his journey not in a fancy garage or a TV studio, but in his family garage, with a tool in his small hand and a big dream in his heart. And that dream only started when he was only 8 years old. At a time when most kids were busy playing video games or riding bikes around the neighborhood, Danny was in his family garage fixing his very first motorcycle. But that first project wasn't just something fun. It was a spark that would light up the fire of a love that would last forever. It was the beginning of a journey that would take him from that small garage to the bright lights of Las Vegas, and finally into the living rooms of millions of fans across the world. But before he started building custom cars for famous people or running a big group of businesses, Danny had another surprising side to him that not many fans know about. He wasn't just crazy about cars, he was also a performer. You see, Danny grew up around TV. His family owned Channel 33 in Las Vegas, and that gave him a rare inside look at the entertainment business. At a young age, Danny started learning how TV worked, from behind the scenes. He learned about cameras, sound, making shows, and how to present things. This behind-the-scenes time would become a huge part of who he was and who he would become. That's how Count Coolrider was born. That's right, before counting cars, Danny Koker was dressing up like a vampire and hosting a scary movie show in Las Vegas. Under the name Count Coolrider, he introduced late-night scary movies on Channel 33, wearing full makeup and a cape and acting with all the charm of an old-school horror host. But this wasn't just some trick. It was classic Danny, who knew how to mix his rock star life, showmanship, and creative smarts. And it was this special mix of his deep love for machines, his knowledge of how TV worked, and his bigger-than-life personality that made him the perfect fit for something much bigger. In 2012, the world finally caught up with Danny's energy and vision. That was the year Counting Cars started on the History Channel. The show wasn't just about fixing up old cars. It was about the stories behind the cars, the passion behind every repair job, and the friendship between Danny and his close crew. And most of all, it was about keeping something beautiful alive in a world that often forgets to love good work. From the very first episode, Counting Cars stood out, and that's because Danny brought something to the screen that couldn't be fake. Whether he was saving a rusty old classic from a junkyard or building a one-of-a-kind ride for a rock star, you could feel his passion in every episode. The show ran from 2012 to 2020 and quickly became one of the most loved reality car shows on TV. Fans weren't just watching to see cars, they were watching to see Danny with his wild hair, sunglasses, energy, and pure honest love for what he did. But the show was only the beginning because behind the scenes, Danny was building an empire. His shop, Count's Customs, was at the center of everything. Hidden away in Las Vegas, the shop became a place for car lovers and tourists from around the world. It wasn't just a regular business. It was a museum of passion and a place where dreams were brought back to life through shiny parts, paint, and hard work. But Danny didn't stop there. He opened Count's Vamped Rock Bar and Grill, a live music place in Vegas that brought together two of his greatest loves, cars and rock and roll. The place became a hotspot known for its live music and drinks, and also for being a little piece of Danny Koker's world. And because Danny is never one to do things halfway, he also started Count's Tattoo Company, located inside the Rio Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. Danny Koker has done so much with his businesses. He has built custom rides for some of the biggest names in rock. People like Alice Cooper, Rob Zombie, and Ozzy Osbourne didn't just trust him with their cars. They trusted him with their legacies. Because for artists like that, a car isn't just a vehicle, it's a statement. And Danny Koker understood that better than anyone. But if you thought his talent stopped in the garage, you'd be wrong. Music has always been in Danny's blood. In fact, he's the lead singer of the hard rock band named Count 77, and he has put the same level of passion and realness into his music as he did into his cars. His band has toured, recorded music, and brought the heat to every stage they stepped on. And if you ever doubted his musical skills, know that Danny performed at Carnegie Hall at just 11 years old. Danny Koker has always been a rare kind of person. However, even the most talented, passionate, and successful people are not safe from life's challenges. And in recent years, Danny has had his fair share of challenges, especially in his business. The legal storm behind the garage doors. For years, Count's Customs was more than just a car shop in Las Vegas. It was the center of Danny Koker's world, a place where custom cars came to life, built with hard work, skill, and real passion. However, even the strongest empires have cracks, and sometimes those cracks don't show until it's too late. For Danny, the trouble came quietly through paperwork, court cases, lawyers, and shocking accusations. It started with something that seemed at first like a normal complaint. A couple, Jeanette and Paul Hurt, walked into Count's Customs with a vision for their car, and they believed that if anyone could bring it to life, it was Danny and his team. After all, they had seen the show and the magic behind the brand, so they left their vehicle, a 1967 Ford Mustang Coupe, in the hands of the shop and handed over $50,000 for the repair job. According to the complaint, the Hurts were promised that the repair would be shown on the History Channel's Counting Cars, but they were later told that the project would not be on TV. And when visiting the shop, they found out that no work had been done to their car, and that the vehicle they got was not even the model they'd agreed on, and worse, they said that their car was returned in worse shape than when they dropped it off. They also said that despite asking for their money back, Count's Customs kept their payment and wouldn't pay them back. Although the outcome of the court case remains privately unknown, the damage was already done to the business's good name and maybe even to Danny's own heart. Because for a man who built everything on good name and passion, being accused of not delivering hurts deep. But that wasn't the end of his legal troubles, because soon after another storm rolled in, this time from inside the walls of Count's Customs itself, in the form of a man named Joseph Frontier. Joseph wasn't just any worker. He was someone trusted to handle the behind-the-scenes business, including the money, records, and important stuff that keeps the shop running smoothly. While Danny focused on cars, cameras, and customers, Frontier was supposed to keep the books in order. However, instead of doing that, he was accused of stealing over $75,000 from the business. According to legal papers and reports that followed, Frontier used company money to pay his own personal bills, including, shockingly, a down payment on a Range Rover, as well as airplane tickets for his own private travel. These weren't mistakes or counting errors. They were planned actions and quiet thefts done behind closed doors, and unfortunately those actions had serious results for Danny's business. Count's Customs was hit with late payment fines and tax problems, reportedly because of the way Joseph handled or messed up the company's money. It wasn't just the loss of the money, it was the ripple effect. Bills went unpaid, money records were in chaos, and Danny was left trying to fix the mess while keeping his shop alive and his good name safe. What hurt even more was the betrayal. Joseph Frontier had been recommended by an outside company named Motor Trend, the network formerly known as Velocity, which aired counting cars. Danny had trusted that recommendation and had believed the person they sent would be professional, reliable, and loyal to the vision of Count's Customs. But after the stealing came to light, Danny didn't just stop at firing Frontier. He went after the people who brought him into the fold. Danny reportedly filed a lawsuit against the recruitment company that referred Frontier, claiming that they failed to tell key information about Joseph's background, including his history with questionable behavior at other jobs. In other words, if Danny had known more, he never would have let him near his business. Unfortunately, by the time all of this came to light, Joseph Frontier had already moved out of Nevada, reportedly running to another state, which further complicated the legal process. Because of where he moved and how the charges were structured, criminal charges couldn't be pursued easily, and much of the fight had to happen in civil court. To the outside world, this might have looked like just another business scandal. But Danny Koker, this was personal. This was a deep wound. When someone messes with your money, your brand, and your name, it's one thing. But when they mess with the dream you've been building since you were a kid and poured your whole life into, that's something else entirely. The result of the scandal was messy. There were legal fees and a lot of damage control had to be done. Despite all of it, he kept going. But the troubles didn't end here for Danny. In fact, he's had to deal with some shocking, controversial claims that have dealt some blows to his good name, the arrest, rumors, and accusations. For someone like Danny Koker, who made his name turning rust into gold and fixing vintage rides into rolling masterpieces, it's hard to imagine controversy sticking to him. But fame has a funny way of attracting rumors, and even someone as solid as Danny hasn't been able to steer clear of the spotlight's darker corners. One of the most persistent rumors that's followed him over the years is the claim that he was arrested for having illegal drugs. It began as a whisper online, but it soon began gaining steam without any real proof till it turned into a full-blown controversy. However, the truth is that no official records have ever confirmed that Danny was arrested for drug possession or anything like it, as there's no evidence that ties him legally to the accusations being thrown around online. And it doesn't help that Danny is a very private guy despite being a TV personality. He doesn't share every part of his life online, nor does he goon interviews to clear the air every time something weird pops up. And that silence has only fueled the rumors. Booty once addressed the rumors in a sit-down interview, and he said, "Apparently, I'm in jail like every other week. I see this all the time, and it's frustrating because it's so not me. I'm a conservative Christian guy, and I'm all about God, family, our country, my team, and my people." Still, this isn't the only controversy that's stuck to his legacy. For years, another question has haunted his most famous creation, counting cars. And some people have begun questioning the realness of the show. This is the kind of question that gets asked about almost every reality TV series eventually. And to be fair, the longer a show runs, the more people begin to notice the cracks in the armor. Some fans started pointing out how certain scenes felt too smooth and too rehearsed. For example, deals that closed in just a few minutes, and clients walking in with a vague idea and driving out with a perfect custom build with no disagreements, delays, or real-life setbacks. And that's when the accusations really began. Some viewers posted online claiming that some of the car builds were staged, or that some customers were actors brought in to spice things up. Others claimed that Danny's reactions to certain projects seemed a little too perfect, like he already knew what was coming. One Reddit thread even broke down a specific episode frame by frame, trying to prove that one of the cars was never actually worked on at the shop. The production company behind the show has never directly responded to these accusations, and Danny and his team have also never officially confirmed or denied whether every part of the show is 100% real. But maybe that's just part of the plan to keep audiences in suspense. Still, the lack of clarity left some longtime followers feeling a little unsettled. But the rumors about Danny Koker didn't end there. In fact, as the years passed and the spotlight became brighter, they've grown, and he's had to deal with some targeted at his personal life and family, which he constantly fights to keep away from the public's eye. Rumors about Danny Koker's personal life. Danny Koker built a life out of fixing vintage cars and classic bikes to their former glory. But for all his strength on screen and his success in business, his personal life hasn't always been so easy to navigate. Away from the engines and the cameras, Danny has faced loss, fear, and cruel rumors that would shake even the strongest. One of the most shocking and heartbreaking rumors to ever hit the internet was a false report claiming that Danny Koker had died. It started when someone shared an obituary link, and before long, fans across social media were sharing their condolences, shocked and heartbroken that the man behind counting cars was supposedly gone. But it wasn't Danny who had passed. It was his father, Danny Koker, Sr., a deeply respected gospel musician and composer, had passed away years earlier. He had been an enormous influence on Danny's love for music, and the two shared a tight bond. But when the obituary began circulating again, out of context, it was misunderstood because, around that same time, Danny had taken a noticeable step back from public appearances. No new episodes of Counting Cars were airing, and that left fans wondering where he was. The absence combined with the resurfacing obituary sparked the confusion. And in today's world where social media often trades facts for fast clicks, the false news spread like wildfire. And for Danny and his family, it must have hurt a great deal. But it wasn't the only personal struggle he and his family faced. Around that same period, his wife Corey Koker was involved in a serious car accident. The details were kept mostly private, just like everything in their marriage. But fans who had followed her closely, through her work at Counts Vamped, began to noticed she was missing from events and updates. But the most shocking thing happened when false reports began to circulate online, claiming that Corey had it in the crash. Some even falsely connected her to a different person entirely with a similar name. And the mix-up turned into a viral rumor. People grieved. Some even reached out to Danny with condolences. It was chaos. And for a while, silence made it worse. Corey eventually came forward to set their cord straight. She was alive and she had survived. But the process of correcting the story wasn't quick. She'd taken time to recover physically and emotionally and understandably didn't rush to speak out. The damage, though, had already been done. Between the false death reports about Danny, the accident rumors about Corey, and their noticeable absence from the spotlight, fans started to worry something was very wrong behind the scenes. And they weren't entirely wrong, because behind the fame, Danny Koker is still human, and success, no matter how big, doesn't protect you from private pain. Though he rarely shares personal details, it's clear that Danny has carried the weight of loss and pressure for a long time. Losing his father, the man who shaped his earliest musical instincts, was a turning point. Add to that the non-stop grind of running several businesses, keeping up a hit TV show, dealing with lawsuits and betrayals, and the constant pressure to be perfect for the cameras. And then there's his own health, which fans have quietly speculated about for years. Though there's no confirmed diagnosis, Danny's extended breaks from the spotlight and the visible toll on his appearance have only raised more questions. But Danny has never been one to share his struggles openly. Instead, he retreats, works, and leans on his music. And above all, he stays loyal to his inner circle and the people who've stood by him when the cameras stopped rolling. But even for someone as tough as Danny, the years have left their mark, and fans are beginning to ask the question they've been too afraid to say out loud. Is Danny Koker okay? Danny's health struggles, rumors, and disappearance. There was a time when you couldn't turn on your TV without seeing Danny Koker's signature bandana, black shades, and deep passion for old-school machines. But then, almost quietly, he started to fade from the screen, and no one really knew why, but it didn't happen all at once. Fans first noticed something subtle. Danny looked thinner, and not the healthy kind of weight loss that comes with a new diet or fitness routine. This was different. His face looked more drawn, his frame noticeably smaller, and people began asking questions about his health. Some fans feared the worst. And just like that, the theories began to spread. Perhaps the most shocking rumor was that Danny had cancer. The rumor came from whispers, worried comments, and side-by-side photos showing how much his appearance had changed. However, insider reports have revealed that his drastic weight loss is stress caused due to the demanding nature of his job, which often includes working up to 18 hours a day. Running an empire like Count's Customs isn't easy. Between the custom builds, the celebrity clients, the TV production schedule, his businesses in Vegas, and his band's touring gigs, Danny's life was a non-stop whirlwind. And stress, when left unchecked, doesn't just drain your energy, it starts to affect your body. Some insiders have also noted that the weight loss may have been tied to stress-related illness, possibly made worse by the sheer physical toll of maintaining such a demanding lifestyle over the years. Although Danny has not addressed the claims, the whispers wouldn't stop, and neither did the questions about why counting cars seemed to vanish from the screens. The hit show that made Danny a household name stopped airing new episodes in 2020. At first, people assumed it was just a break. After all, reality shows often take time between seasons. But as the months dragged into years with no official update, speculation turned into concern about the possibility of Danny's retirement. Some fans believed he stepped away by choice, looking for peace after decades of high-pressure work. Others believed it wasn't his decision at all, and that Counting Cars had been canceled due to declining ratings or creative differences with the network. But again, Danny has never explained. There was no goodbye interview or a final farewell. He just faded from the screen, leaving fans to wonder what really happened. And it's not just about the TV appearance. Even his public appearance have become fewer and farther between. Although some people have spotted him at Count's Customs and his other business, some say he looks tired and quieter, like someone who had been through something big but didn't want to talk about it. And maybe that's just who Danny Koker has always been. While other celebrities race to post their every move online, Danny has always kept their real stuff close to the chest. But his absence hasn't gone unnoticed. And for fans who grew up watching him breathe new life into dead engines, seeing Danny disappear without a word has been painful. But now the big question that hangs in the air unanswered is what happened to Danny Koker after Counting Cars ended, and what has he been up to? Where is Danny Koker today? So after all the success, the rumors, the disappearances, and the personal storms. Where exactly is Danny Koker now? The truth is, even though he's not on TV anymore, Danny Koker never really went away. He just took a big step back from the spotlight, and while his silence has left fans wondering, his work has quietly continued behind the scenes. First and foremost, Count's Customs, the beating heart of his business empire, is still standing. Despite the legal disputes, employee scandals, and everything else that's happened over the years, the shop continues to operate in Las Vegas. Custom cars are still being built, tours are still running. Visitors still stop by every day, hoping to catch a glimpse of Danny or see some of the incredible vehicles made famous by the show. But Count's Customs is only one piece of the puzzle. Count's vamped rock bar and grill is another big part of his world that mixes his love of music with his Vegas roots. The bar continues to host concerts, late-night events, and appearances by local and touring acts. And sometimes when the timing is right, Danny himself takes the stage. That's because his musical career never ended. Even when the cameras stopped rolling, Danny Koker has always had a rock and roll soul. Long before he was a reality TV star, he was a performer. And to this day, he remains the lead vocalist of Count 77, a hard rock band that channels classic 70s vibes with raw, authentic energy. They reportedly still play shows and record. And when they're on stage, they still pack the house with fans. Remember, Danny is more than just a mechanic. Music in many ways seems to be the thing that keeps him centered. In a world full of shifting headlines and public scrutiny, it's the one part of his life where he's always been in control. But what about TV? Is there any chance that Danny might return to the screen? Right now, there's no official word on a Counting Cars reboot, and none W-series featuring Danny has been confirmed. The show that made him a global name hasn't aired new episodes since 2020, and the History Channel has remained quiet about its future. Despite countless fan petitions, social media campaigns, and online discussions, nothing new has materialized. Still, the hope hasn't died. Many fans believe that Danny isn't done with TV, and they hope that when the time is right, he'll make a comeback. Not just because of nostalgia, but because there's still so much he could share. He has decades of knowledge, a lifetime of stories, and an entire car culture legacy that hasn't been fully told. But for now, Danny Koker seems content doing things his own way, out of the limelight and away from the noise, focusing on what really matters to him, like his businesses, his music, and the people in his inner circle. He may no longer be the face of prime time car restoration, but he's still a living legend in the custom car community. At 61, Danny Koker may have stepped back, but he hasn't stopped. He's still building and still living on his own terms. And that's the best kind of legacy anyone can have. But what do you think? Would you want to see Danny Koker come back on TV? Tell us in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen.